Hello, my name is Xavier Robert, coming to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State. A very good evening to you. And today on Worldview, King Charles III's state visit to France postponed after request by President Emmanuel Macron. The U.S. carries out airstrikes against Iran-linked groups in eastern Syria after a drone attack killed U.S. contractor. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky tells European leaders to rapidly increase supply of modern weapons to Ukrainian forces, particularly jet fighters and long-range missile systems, or prepare for the war dragging on for years. The details of these stories and more in a moment. First on Worldview today, King Charles III's state visit to France has been postponed after a request by President Emmanuel Macron. According to Downing Street, the French president said they would not be serious and would lack common sense to go ahead after unions called a day of pension protests during the visit. The trip to Paris and Bordeaux had been due to begin on Sunday, but both cities were caught up in violence on Thursday, some of the worst since demonstrations began in January. Buckingham Palace said the decision to postpone the three-day visit by Charles III and Camilla, the Queen Consort, was due to the situation in France. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has met Benjamin Netanyahu at Downing Street as the Israeli leader faces domestic turmoil over judicial reforms. Sunak greeted Netanyahu outside Number 10 before talks over security and the threat from Iran. Netanyahu will also meet Home Secretary Suella Braverman on his one-day visit. Hundreds of protesters gathered at the gates of Downing Street to demonstrate against the Israeli Prime Minister's policies. There was a cacophony, including shouts of shame and traitor, as Netanyahu made the short walk from his convoy to the steps of Number 10. Separately, the U.S. defense chief has said that the U.S. carried out airstrikes against Iran-linked groups in eastern Syria after a drone attack killed a U.S. contractor. According to a monitoring group, 8 pro-Iran fighters were killed. Defense officials said the airstrikes happened on Thursday night, hours after the drone attack, which U.S. intelligence said was of Iranian origin. U.S. bases in northeast Syria have come under attack before, with the U.S. responding with airstrikes. Last August, the U.S. bombed sites in eastern Syria, which it said were linked to Iran's Islamic Revolution Guard Corps, its most powerful armed force, after rocket attacks on U.S. troops there. Meanwhile, the U.S. and Canada have reached a deal to reject asylum seekers at unofficial border crossings. This is according to officials. Large numbers of migrants have been making unsanctioned crossings on Rosam Road at the U.S.-Canada border. The move closes a loophole created by a 2004 asylum agreement with the U.S. on where migrants have to make their asylum claims. It allowed Canada to turn migrants away at official points of entry, but not at unofficial crossing points. Unnamed U.S. officials told media that, as a part of the deal, Canada will now also create a new refugee program for 15,000 migrants fleeing persecution and violence in South and Central America. Biden is in Ottawa, Canada for 24 hours to talk about the series of economic, trade and immigration issues with Churchill. The migration accord is scheduled to be announced before he returns to the U.S. today. The agreement is expected to allow officials on both sides of the border turn back such asylum seekers heading in either direction. In the meantime, this weekend, Vice President Kamala Harris begins a 3-country tour of Africa as the United States seeks to pitch itself as a better partner than China, which has invested heavily in the continent over several decades. Harris will be in Ghana from March 26 through 29 and then in Tanzania from March 29 through 31. Her final stop is Zambia, where she will be from March 31 through April 1. She will meet the three countries' presidents and plans to announce public and private sector investments. Harris will discuss China's engagement in technology and economic issues in Africa that concern the U.S., as well as China's involvement in debt restructuring. Away from that, now India's parliament has disqualified senior opposition leader Rahul Gandhi a day after he was sentenced to 2 years in prison in the defamation case. A parliament notice said that Gandhi stands disqualified from the membership of Lok Sabha, alluding to the lower house of parliament. It was convicted by the court for 2019 comments about Prime Minister Narendra Modi's surname at an election rally. Gandhi was a Congress Party member of parliament from Wayanad in the state of Kerala. He remains on bail for 30 days and has said he will appeal the verdict given by a court in Gujarat state. Gandhi's party had termed the verdict erroneous and unsustainable and pledged to fight the disqualification both legally and politically. Away from that, a digital billboard artwork in Hong Kong, which included secret references to local dissidents, has been removed. The No Rioters piece by U.S. artist Patrick Armadan had been displayed the past week on the side of a department store in central Hong Kong. The artist revealed the deception last week, which involved inserting names of jailed activists in flashing texts that could not be seen by the naked eye. He told media he had created it in solidarity with protesters. The 24-second video, which also featured a panning surveillance camera, had included the details of jailed pro-democracy protesters. This could be seen in photographs of the artwork. Armadan said the artwork's removal completed its political message about the crackdown on the city's civil freedoms. On Russian invasion, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had told European leaders to rapidly increase the supply of modern weapons to his forces, particularly jet fighters and long-range missile systems. Otherwise, they should prepare for the war dragging on for years. Speaking on a train to Kiev after his third visit in 2 days to war-ravaged areas near the front lines in the south and east of Ukraine, Zelensky gave an emotional account of what he had seen as he addressed a summit of European Union leaders gathered in Brussels via video link. In a long and sharply worded address at times, Zelensky said it was up to the EU as a bloc to take action to contain Russia as its invasion of Ukraine enters the second year. While he welcomed a recent EU plan to send Kiev 1 million artillery shells, he kept up his demands for warplanes and missiles that he believes will be more effective at pushing back Russian forces. Zelensky's comments represented an unusually open display of frustration with European nations who have donated to Ukraine's war effort. He also complained that the EU appeared to be in no hurry to impose more sanctions against Moscow. Now, after the break, we have reports from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where President Felix Tshisekedi has appointed the country's former Vice President Jean-Pierre Bemba, who was imprisoned for more than 10 years for war crimes, as defense minister in a sweeping government reshuffle. Do stay with us for details on this and more right after the break. Thanks for staying tuned. Now, the Democratic Republic of the Congo's President Felix Tshisekedi has appointed the country's former Vice President Jean-Pierre Bemba, who was imprisoned for more than 10 years for war crimes as defense minister in a sweeping government reshuffle. His appointment was part of an overhaul of the 57-member cabinet, which the president's spokesperson said was urgent and necessary in an announcement on national television late on Thursday. No further details were given. Now, the reshuffle, which was more extensive than observers had predicted, comes just months before a presidential election on December 20, in which Tshisekedi is likely to seek a second term. The presidential candidates are expected to be announced next October, with a final list due in November. One likely challenger for the presidency is Martin Fayulu, who claimed victory in the 2018 poll. Another is Moise Katumbi, former governor of the oil-rich Katanga province. Separately, now Saudi Arabia and Syria are in talks over a resumption of consular services between the two countries. This is according to Saudi state television, an indication of a possible restoration of ties between the two countries. Saudi Arabia, which backed the Syrian opposition in the country's war, closed its embassy in Damascus and expelled the Syrian ambassador in 2012. The re-establishment of ties between Riyadh and Damascus would mark the most significant development yet in moves by Arab states to normalize ties with al-Assad, who was shunned by many Western and Arab states after Syria's civil war began in 2011. Away from that now, Israel's Attorney General has told Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that his personal involvement in plans to overhaul the country's judiciary is illegal. Gali Baharev Miara said in a letter that the legal situation is clear and he must refrain from any involvement in initiatives to change the judiciary, including the makeup of the committee for the appointment of judges, as such activity is a conflict of interest. Now, Netanyahu, who is on trial on corruption charges that he denies, said his hands had been tied, but a law amended on Thursday to limit the circumstances in which a prime minister can be removed gave him more space for maneuver. Now, in business, South Korea police say that Dongwon, the fugitive cryptocurrency boss behind the $40 billion collapse of the Terra USD and Luna tokens, has been arrested in Montenegro. He has since been charged with fraud by prosecutors in the U.S. Earlier this year, U.S. regulators accused Kwon and his company Terraform Labs of orchestrating a multi-billion-dollar crypto asset securities fraud. The firm did not immediately respond to a media request for comment. South Korea authorities issued an arrest warrant for Kwon last September as they believed Terraform Labs had violated capital market rules. Still in business, bank shares across Europe have fallen sharply as worries over the financial strength of the sector return. Shares in Germany's Deutsche Bank saw the biggest fall, dropping 14% at one point on Friday, with other lenders also seeing big losses. Investors have already been spooked by the collapse of two U.S. banks and the rushed takeover of Swiss giant Credit Suisse by its rival UBS. Now, stock markets in London, Germany, and France were all lower. The three major exchanges in the U.S. were also down in opening trade, dragged lower in part by falls in shares of financial firms including Morgan Stanley, J.P. Morgan Chase, and Goldman Sachs. Away from that now, Claude Lorius, the leading glaciologist whose expeditions helped prove that humans were responsible for global warming, has died at the age of 91. He led 22 expeditions to Greenland and Antarctica during his lifetime. It was during one trip to Antarctica in 1965 where an evening of whiskey with ice cubes led him to prove humankind's role in the heating of the Earth's surface. Lorius died on Tuesday morning in the French region of Burgundy. It was his love for adventure which set him on the path to identifying and predicting an impending catastrophe for the planet. In a separate development now, an asteroid large enough to destroy a city will pass between the orbits of the Earth and the Moon this weekend. Luckily for us, missing both. The object, named 2023 DZ2, was discovered a month ago. On Saturday, it will pass within 515,000 kilometers of the Moon before flying by Earth hours later. It is rare for such a huge asteroid, estimated to be between 40 and 90 meters in diameter, to come so close to the planet. According to NASA, it is an important opportunity for astronomers to increase their knowledge of asteroids in the event that a dangerous object were discovered with the potential to hit Earth. There is no change of the city killer striking Earth, but its close approach offers a great opportunity for observations. This is according to the European Space Agency's Planetary Defense Chief, Richard Morsel. As it is passing just 68,000 kilometers away, the asteroid will be visible through binoculars and small telescopes across the globe. A live web broadcast of its approach will be provided by the Virtual Telescope project. The object looks set to return towards Earth's orbit in 2026, but scientists have ruled it out as a threat to the planet on that occasion too. On our entertainment news, Paul Rusesabagina, who was portrayed as a hero in the Hollywood film Hotel Rwanda and was serving a 25-year sentence in Rwanda on terrorism charges, has had his sentence commuted by presidential order. The announcement was made by a Rwandan government spokesperson today. Rusesabagina is expected to be released on Saturday. A government source told media he will be initially flown to Qatar's capital Doha and then on to the United States, adding that Rusesabagina was released after he wrote a letter to President Paul Kagame seeking clemency. Rusesabagina became a global celebrity after the release of Hotel Rwanda, which depicted him risking his life to shelter hundreds of people as the manager of a luxury hotel in Kigali during the 1994 genocide, when ethnic Hutus killed more than 800,000 people, mostly from the Tutsi minority. And finally, on Worldview today, TikTok CEO Shou has concluded his first public hearing before the United States Congress, where he attempted to dispel concerns over the Chinese-owned app's ties to the government in Beijing and its alleged inability to stem harmful content. The hearing, which stretched longer than 5 hours, took place on Thursday. Democrats and Republicans on the committee expressing skepticism over the company's autonomy from the Chinese government. For his part, Shou sought to portray the app, which has 150 million monthly users in the US, as a place where people can be creative and curious. He also maintained that the company is taking actions that will surpass industry standards in terms of data protection and transparency. And with that, we wrap up our package for you on Worldview today. Do ensure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtv.ng. My name is Xavier Robert, wishing you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, and you have been watching Worldview on Spectrum TV. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.